Hello and welcome. If this is our first time together, it's nice to meet you. My name is Patrick Geary. I am an intuitive astrologer and celestial channel, and today I will be walking us through the sun's journey through Aquarius. The way that I work best is to allow this to flow through me in one fresh take. So thank you so much for your loving attention and patience as the insight arrives. With all that said, before I dive into the specifics of the astrology, I just want to take a look at the energy image that I saw for this month, and it's the image that you'll see behind me. It is the big bad wolf looking to blow down a brick house, and there in the background, we see a gleaming tower of light. And when I first tuned into this, what I saw and what I noticed was this big bad wolf blowing and blowing and blowing this brick house. But the brick house, unlike in the fairy tale, doesn't look inhabited. It looked abandoned. There were certainly not three delicious little piglets inside. Instead, it just felt like a disused structure. And yes, still holding in its solidity, but also already starting to give. Not necessarily because of the efforts of the wolf, but just because of the passage of time, as though it was ready to be gradually absorbed and reintegrated into the earth. It felt like its purpose had been served, and yet there was this wolf blowing, 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 putting in so much effort for no discernible reason other than perhaps enjoying the effort of blowing something down. And what was interesting is that this didn't really hold my attention as soon as I noticed this gleam of light in the background. And when I looked further back, I saw right there, not so much in the distance, something that felt very present to me, this gorgeous gleaming tower of light. And that's what really held my attention. That's where I wanted to look. And it felt more and more like what was happening between the brick house and the wolf was just a distraction or kind of almost like a dead or hollowed out drama. And what's interesting to me too is if you think about structural integrity and you think about the structural integrity of light, this light tower feels no threat from the big bad wolf and perhaps is of no interest to the big bad wolf. Maybe the big bad wolf can't even see it because there's nothing to blow down. It wouldn't even be possible. So it raises some interesting questions or reflection points for me around, well, where are you putting your attention? Are you putting your attention on what might be a dead drama? Or are you putting it on this gorgeous future, the possibilities that await that are already here, and also around structural integrity? Where are you basing your integrity? Are you basing it in an institution? Are you basing it in something that's physical or material? Or are you basing it in light? Are you basing it in perhaps the more fundamental structure of our universe as we understand it? So, with all of that said, I'd love to pull up one chart to go through with you, and that is the ingress chart, so the moment that the sun enters into the sign of Aquarius. And you'll see the sun down here at 0 degrees of Aquarius, and this is happening at 1:44 a.m. here in London. And as that sun enters into Aquarius, we can see there are a few other planets that are joining the sun in Aquarius. We see Venus, we see Pluto, and we see the moon, fresh off the heels of a new moon in Aquarius. We also see that the sun is still very much in relationship with Mercury and Mars sitting in Capricorn. So within the range of the sun, and in traditional terms, we would talk about planets being combust or close to the sun when they're within 9 degrees. And then if we go further out to 15 degrees, this is still a planet that we would consider to be under the beams of the sun. So still touched by the light of the sun. Sometimes in traditional astrology, this term can be used with some implication of negativity, that a planet won't be visible and it can in some way be harmed by the sun. I don't want to use this term in this way. I just want to acknowledge that the sun is very much, and the light of the sun is very much in contact with all of the inner planets here, the moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, and then also the planet, and I still think of Pluto as a planet, the planet that would be furthest out, at least in terms of our more established modern understanding of planets in astrology. So we're looking at this big inner activation, and then at the same time, we have the energy of Pluto that's sitting there. So, this to me is a very active cycle where we're including all of these personal planets. And if we go out to Mars, these can be planets that we think of as they're closer into us. So, they can reflect our individual experience, they can reflect things that are happening in our daily lives, very deep personal cycles. And yet, also, we have Pluto, which is much more of a generational or transpersonal planet. And Pluto reflecting deep change, among other things, evolution. And often that change that represents the death of an existing structure or the death of an existing paradigm so that a paradigm that fills us with greater power and agency is able to emerge. So this can sometimes bring up fear, this can bring up resistance, and ultimately it is that deeper question of, are you more able to stand fully in your life? Are you able to stand more fully in your own integrity? Perhaps if I think about Aquarius, Aquarius is a sign that's so associated with integrity, with authenticity. So as I tune into this energy, it really feels like there is this strong invitation from the sun and from our inner solar system to move into a place of personal integrity. And that invitation might be coming from the collective. It might be coming from some of these bigger systemic or structural changes or collapse that we're noticing in the environment around us. So, can we look at things that are happening around us, things that might fill us with fear, things that might fill us with terror? Even with Pluto, I'll often see questions around abuse of power or authorities abusing power, authorities acting outside of their own integrity, knowingly acting outside of their own integrity or acting outside of their own authenticity, outside of their own truth. Can you look at those events that are happening on a systemic level as an invitation for you to step more into your own personal integrity, to step more into your own authenticity? Appreciate the contrast. I'm looking at a system. This system doesn't seem to be behaving from a place of integrity or authenticity, or this leader isn't behaving from a place of integrity or authenticity, since leaders so often embody the energy of a system. And can I take that as an invitation to me personally to step more into integrity with my values? I also think there's so much here around humanity and dignity, both of which are heavily associated with Aquarius. So, can I step into my own human dignity more? And can I respect the human dignity of others? And that also includes people with whom I don't have an ideological similarity, people who might view the world differently. Can I still treat them with respect and dignity? If I deny someone else their own human dignity, then I'm also denying myself my own human dignity because we're all in this together at the end of the day. So, how do we move into a place of gratitude and appreciation? And maybe even here, how do we integrate that into our own value system? To me, gratitude is incredibly supportive of authenticity. It's incredibly supportive of integrity. Because when we sit in a place of gratitude, we're not sitting in resistance to something. We're not pushing against it. When we push against it, ultimately, we're only ever pushing against ourselves. So, how do we allow? How do we enable? And how, as we do that, we reclaim our attention. No longer are we reacting against the circumstances that we see. We begin to hold our attention in a new way, and we can look at that gleaming tower of light in the distance and just know that in this bigger picture, if I can come from this place of light and love, if I can appreciate that all is happening for me to get to know myself better, then I can stand more firmly and safely where I am. I also want to highlight, of course, it's interesting that I just find myself talking so much around values and how we are working with values, and even how fear can get in the way of us expressing our values or connecting more deeply with our values, or relating with one another, since we're looking at Venus and Pluto sitting right here together in Aquarius. And so that conjunction, which is happening on that day, that really brings that energy into the whole month. And Venus and Pluto, we definitely are looking here at like a deep invitation to go into what we value most, what we value most about ourselves, and what we value most about our relationships with other people. And how do we behave with great authenticity, even as we experience differences or as we experience conflict with one another. I think it's interesting here too. The sun is at the midpoint between Venus and Mars, and this is exactly where the sun was when it entered into the sign of Capricorn. So we're getting a doubling down of that energy. I've noticed that's brought up a lot around passion, a lot around vitality. I've noticed that it's help me think more mindfully about the relationships that I'm entering into. And it's also brought up some conflict. It's also brought up a feeling of separation. So even in the midst of a feeling of separation, or perhaps even fear of separation or fear within a relationship, so fear of abuse, fear of violence, these can be things that emerge. Even if those are even as those are happening, how can I move more deeply into myself and more deeply into my own authenticity and move away from needing to try to control how other people are behaving so that I can feel safe and so that I can be intimate and I can be open and I can be vulnerable? Can I choose to set my own boundaries? Can I choose to live exactly as I am? I don't need to apologize for emotions. I don't need to apologize for how I feel. I don't need to apologize for how I'm relating to other people when I am in my own authentic truth. I can just allow for it to be and allow for that to be enough. And perhaps even here, how are you entering into a relationship with yourself as one of those deep questions that we're all going to be asking? And can you move through the layers of fear, the layers of anger that might prevent you from really seeing yourself and deep listening? I think that's something that also comes up with Pluto is can we move into a place of deep, deep listening below? And when we move into that place of deep listening, a lot of those old patterns are allowed to dissolve. So allowing yourself to go deeper in your relationships with yourself and with those around you. This feels like to me a passport to rebirth, to renewal. I think it's also really interesting that we have this new moon energy. So you'll see that the moon is here at 14 degrees of Aquarius. So it is just a little over a day after a new moon. And that moon is about to emerge from the beams of the sun. When it gets about 15 degrees away, that's when it starts becoming visible or more apparently visible in the sky. And that's a big moment for the moon. That's sort of that's this moment of emergence, planet coming out from under the beams. It's this announcement of light, this announcement of presence. So it has this sort of feeling to it, a feeling of almost like a revelation or insight. And we're just on the cusp of that here. So you might also have this feeling or this sense. And it's interesting too, when I saw that gleaming tower of light, I wasn't in it. It was right there. It was right there, and I could feel it and I could sense it. And also, I wasn't fully arrived in it. So there's something about that too that might feel like it's just there for you. It's like on the tip of your tongue all month long. And what's it like to just to enjoy that feeling, to just appreciate it, to allow for it to be there and sit there? And of course, as we know, the moon will move forward, the tower will come towards us. We'll be in it before we know it. I also want to highlight where Saturn, the traditional ruler, or as I prefer to think of, local representative of Aquarius, is sitting in the chart. And we see Saturn here in Pisces, very close to Neptune. So we'll talk more about that Saturn Neptune energy perhaps in another video, since they will be coming together in February in a very spectacular conjunction. Generally, when I think about Saturn and Neptune, I certainly think about our notions of reality changing, understanding that our physical reality is a momentary expression of the infinite possibilities in the quantum field, which sounds like a mouthful, right? What feels more relevant to talk about here is compassion. When I think about Pisces and I think about Saturn, I think about a dedication and commitment to being compassionate and to having a compassionate outlook. Neptune certainly helping us to appreciate how other people are feeling, helping to appreciate the unity. So softening in some ways that Saturn and bringing in that gorgeous emotion that Pisces really offers us. So it tells me that one of the keys to working with yourself, to working with other people, to all of us working together as we're looking at some of these questions around structural integrity, around where we're putting our attention, how we are forming our reality together and individually, it really raises to me that softness, that question of softness, and are you being compassionate? Are you being kind? Can you commit? Can you recommit to being compassionate to yourself, kind to yourself? Can you appreciate how much you've done? Can you appreciate how hard you've worked? Can you appreciate all that you have put in and all that everyone has put in for us to be here where we are? And can we look at each other with softness and with love? So I want to bear that in mind too as we think about this energy that is flowing with us and through us this month. So, with all of that said, let's take a peek at what the what the forecast is. So again, on January 20th, we'll have that sun entering into the sign of Aquarius. Again, it's in contact with all of the inner planets. It's also just coming off of a sextile with Saturn and Neptune, and similarly a trine with Uranus. So again, it's really interesting that that's also drawing in what it feels like to me is opportunity for deep and perhaps even sudden or revolutionary change. And we're getting again that when you dive into it or when you wish for it to be accessible, maybe it feels like you're more able to change timelines or to change perspectives or to change your notion of reality with that Saturn Neptune energy coming in. It's just really notable how the sun is in direct contact with virtually all of the planets that are sitting here apart from Jupiter. It's in direct contact with every other planet. So this is a very active entry and ingress point when the sun enters into Aquarius on January 20th. On the same day, we also have Mercury entering into Aquarius. And Mercury going into Aquarius, I love Mercury in Aquarius. Mercury, which is very much our, among other things, I think about it as our communicator. And for me, communication, more and more, it's not just about talking, it's also about listening. And with Mercury in Aquarius, it's a beautiful, heady energy. It's where we can really have an appreciation of ethics, of guidelines, and authentic expression. And on the day after, so January 21st, we're going to have the sun conjunct Mercury in what we could refer to as a cazimi. Those days are excellent days to tune out, to tune in. So to take some quiet time to really allow for your brain to tune into divine guidance, to tune into higher understandings, higher principles of morality, higher principles of ethics, maybe getting some deeper clarity on what integrity and truth mean to you in this exact moment, what authentic expression means to you in this exact moment. So taking time to step out of your daily life, your mundane circumstances, and really tune into what's happening in the bigger picture on the higher level, and understanding what role you can play in supporting the emergence of truth in the world around us. And then on January 22nd, we're going to have Mercury conjunct Pluto. Mercury conjunct Pluto to me is such a wonderful signature for, it feels to me like almost like investigative reporting, really going deep, deep, deep down into something and unearthing information that needs to come out, again, in the interest of the truth, in the interest of all. So it can be a time when we are experiencing collectively like ethical disclosures or even disclosures around ethical violations or abuses of power, which can have a very Pluto flavor to it, how people have used power over other people rather than sought to empower other people to act in their own agency, sought to take their power, sought to take their agency. That can be something that emerges with Mercury and Pluto here. And also, I really think about, again, authentic expression. I think so much around like an integrity cleanse in our language. Where are you deceiving yourself? Where is what you were saying outwardly not the same as what you were feeling inwardly? So it's a great time with Mercury and Aquarius generally. There is perhaps a more of a reflective pause available rather than this I speak before I think. It can be more I think before I speak, really checking that what you say is honest. I think I heard a statement recently that adults lie, might be like three, four, five, six, like some number of times that the average adult lies some number of times a day. And could you just do this 0 times a day? Or if you do find yourself in relation where a system where you need to be deceptive because you're answering a question that perhaps that the system really wants to ask. Our systems sometimes have checkbox exercises, or there may be a spirit that somehow gets lost when it's reduced into a form, or it may even be that you need to answer a certain way to access a benefit or a service that you need, that you know you were entitled to and you genuinely need, but the system would give you a no if you were to provide the apparent facts before you rather than speak to the true energetic need that you have. So you find yourself in a situation such like that. Can you both give an answer to the system that you need to give in order to access the services that are necessary and beneficial to you and to all? And also be honest with yourself about what you've said and why you've said it and what you mean. And when we do that, we also, while there can be dissonance between what we have said and the truth and what we know to be true, at the same time, we're able to reduce that dissonance and we're able to really send out that signal that what I want is to create an honest, And what I want is to create a world where it's safe for everyone to be honest, and it's safe for everyone to be fully honest all of the time. This isn't necessarily the world that we live in now. Honesty can feel, in some ways, at least when you look at systemic honesty, it can feel like a luxury, where if you are fully resourced, it doesn't really matter if someone takes something away from you. But if I guess if you need to lie in order to get food so that you can eat, that feels very different. That's a very different energy. So looking at things from that higher moral perspective, really, how can we move into a world where honesty is not a luxury, but honesty is celebrated and honesty grants you access to the services and entitlements that you need? Okay, so now looking at January 23rd, a few days later, we see the sun come into a conjunction with Pluto. So again, there's a lot of Pluto activations. Pluto's in the earlier degrees of Aquarius, so as soon as planets are moving in, they're running into this Pluto energy. And that Sun-Pluto energy can certainly raise questions on where am I afraid to shine? Where am I afraid to be naturally brilliant? Where am I dimming my own light so that I'm not rejected, marginalized, or excluded by other people? And just remembering here that when you step into your own authenticity, when you step into the real version of you and you bring that into the world, and you will probably encounter fear around doing so as you do. There are so many reasons that we can justifiably feel afraid of being seen. What you do is you create a climate where more and more people feel comfortable being seen. You create an inclusive climate. So be the inclusive climate. Take the courageous step, decide to be the inclusive climate by including yourself in all of what you do and in all of who you are. And then we'll look at that same day, Mars moving into Aquarius and out of Capricorn, and Mars in Aquarius. Again, it's a very different energy from Mars and Capricorn. Mars and Capricorn, very grounded, very steady. Mars in Aquarius, we can be looking at ideological tension, or we can also be looking at that feeling when I think about Mars and its higher virtues. Really, what do you stand for, and what do you proudly stand for? So again, like what values do you stand for? What morals do you stand for? How do you stand for human dignity? How do you stand for inclusion? How do you embrace this energy in your life? And where do you see yourself being confronted with questions around that? Since Mars can often do that to us, or not to us, can often do that for us so that we are better able to choose what we want to stand for. On January 26th, we'll have the first quarter moon. The sun will be squaring the moon in Taurus. So that first quarter, again, is a time where we are coming into the light, where something is starting to emerge. Perhaps we're setting goals. Even here, where we're looking at the moon in Taurus, I love the moon in Taurus, and this moon feels very comfortable. It feels very nurtured. And it's also very real. It's very stable. So looking at maybe even here, like what would what would it physically look like? What would our world physically look like? And how would we be creating it to be in line with our sense of integrity and our sense of authenticity? If you think about something like housing and how we build housing and how we construct it, what would a way be that we could do that would actually be really inclusive? So what structures can you build in your life, or how can you materially alter or shape your life so that it is more inclusive, so that it is more celebrating of your authenticity, of your own structural integrity? And yeah, how are you choosing to build that, and how are you actively contributing to this dream being built around all of us? And then we'll see the day after January 27th, Mars will be conjunct Pluto in Aquarius. So again, we have another Pluto activation here. With Mars Pluto, we often get questions around anger, and we can get questions here too around hurt. The anger or hurt that we may be experiencing from being marginalized, from being isolated, from being othered in some way, or that we experience from doing that to someone else. Of course, if we are othering someone else, if we are viewing someone else as morally reprehensible, as inferior, or as problematic in some way, we're really just labeling ourselves with that same effect. Aquarius is a wonderful mirror, and it really is that reminder that whatever I see in someone else is also what I see in myself. So there can be anger, a deep anger that boils up from the surface. Anger is wonderful. It lets us know that a boundary has been violated, that something has been transgressed. How do we sit with that anger? How do we positively express it? And yeah, I'd say here for me too, there is something around allowing ourselves to move into a place of calm. And how can we enter into how can we enter into experience of conflict from a place of calm, allowing for there to be differences of opinion, for there to be different outlooks, not expecting or needing someone else to change, or even needing ourselves to change, but just being able to hold the calm and hold that reflective space. And it can be really terrifying to do that. Terrifying to not defend yourself, terrifying to, it can also be terrifying to not bring someone else down so that they're at your level. Just sitting with your anger or sitting with the hurt that lies below the anger and just allowing for it to be there in a cool, reflective space. Then there's nothing to react to. Okay, and then we'll be experiencing on January 29th, Mercury will come into a conjunction with Venus. And this is a very different energy from Mars, Pluto. It's a really nice counterpoint. Mercury and Venus here, I often see them with both a love of language, a love of ideas, a love of principles. And similarly, I see this as often us being able to express, to talk, or to listen with greater love, to listen with looking for things that are positive, looking for things that we want to affirm versus things that we might want to tear down or things that we might want to remove from our awareness, looking for things that feel and look nice. So it's a compliment. It's pausing. It's something saying something really nice or warm about someone, about the way that they think, about the way that they are, about their authenticity, about their truth, about how they are standing in that. So this has a really nice feeling and perhaps could even be like a balm after that maybe more intense or stormy Mars conjunct Pluto energy. Then on February 22nd, February 2nd, we'll have the full moon. That full moon will be in Leo as the moon comes to oppose the sun in Aquarius. And I always love the Leo Aquarius polarity, which so often feels like we're looking at identity, with Aquarius really looking at our identity in this collective sense, and Leo more looking at our identity individually as the main characters in our own lives. So with that full moon, I often feel like, well, where do I sit within all of this? Inside around, what is my role? I'm on stage. What am I saying? What is my part in all of this? How am I holding this attention? What is my message? And how is what I am doing now contributing to everything that is happening around me? I know that I'm the main character in my life. I know that you are all the main characters in your life. The more that I step into my own me-ness, the more that I empower and enable you to step into your own you-ness. And there can sometimes be tension that we get at that full moon, that tension between this individual me-ness and then the we-ness that I see all around us. So knowing that we're all different and that truth looks different to all of us. This is, as we understand it, this is how the universe operates. Truth is subjective. We all have our own truth. And yet we're also all looking at one picture of the bigger truth at the same time. How do we allow those things to exist simultaneously? And here, especially with that moon in Leo, I think so much around celebrating your own story, celebrating your own narrative, owning it, playing with it, creating it. And then on February 6th, Mercury will enter into Pisces, so moving out of Aquarius, which is a big game shifter for Mercury. Mercury going to Pisces, which feels much soupier, much more imaginative, much more open, much more expansive. And then on February 9th, the sun will be squaring the moon in Scorpio at the third quarter moon. This is such an awesome invitation to release. When I think about Scorpio, I so think about that power that we have for deep release when we're able to sit with the discomfort, to sit with things that aren't easy to sit with. And with that third quarter moon, this is such a great signature for deep emotional release. So, really, just by being with whatever your emotions are, whatever your feelings are, just by putting attention on what has been stuck, what has been buried below the surface, what is floating all the way down there, putting your peaceful, loving attention on it, it gets permission to be seen. It gets permission to shift. I really think here around listening, deep listening to your body, listening without expectation, listening from this place of peace, this glorious sense of peace and calm that Scorpio can offer us when we get into that placid state that lets us go into deep listening. So what can we deeply listen to? Just knowing that in so doing, we are facilitating a release. And it can be uncomfortable. And it's okay for things to be uncomfortable. Scorpio is wonderful at reminding us of that too. Then on February 10th, we'll see Venus follow Mercury into Pisces, and Venus moving into Pisces, which certainly has much more of a feeling of I'm in love with life, I'm in love with love, I'm in love with the universe and everything around it. So this is a change in tempo. We're seeing that both with Venus and Mercury moving out of this more mental energy in Aquarius, moving more into this emotional energy of Pisces. So we're starting to feel that shift as the month continues. And then on February 14th, I want to highlight that Saturn is moving from Pisces into Aries. And Saturn and Aries definitely asking questions around the structures that we want to put in place for beginning anew. When I think about Saturn and Aries, I think about really the commitment, I really think about inertia in some ways. Aries is so much around getting things going and being a catalyst, and Saturn so often can function like the brake pedal more than like the gas pedal in our lives. So, what are the structures that we need to have in place in order for us to create inertia, in order for us to create momentum, in order for us to get things going? It's like I'm getting this giant, like I'm getting like a Mack truck going. So I'm going to need a lot of gasoline. I'm going to need a big tank. I'm going to need a big, strong gas pedal in order to get this thing going. And when I get it going, I'm also up, I think there is something here too. It feels like there is something around applying pressure in some way or applying exertion or force. I don't know if those are exactly the right words, but the same way that you're pushing down a pedal, that like I'm pushing down a pedal and I'm gonna do it slowly and gradually, and then I'm gonna hold it in place and I'm just gonna know the keys in the ignition, things are moving forward. So it feels to me like this shifts the energy very much from Pisces, which is softer, more expansive, more universal, into Aries, which is it's here and it's now, and I'm putting my foot on the pedal and I'm committing to move forward. So it adds an element of fire here, and it's asking us, especially with that 0 degree of Aries point, of what am I initiating and what am I seeking to initiate. So this is a big change as the Saturn is that ruling representative or the local representative of Aquarius. We're really being asked to move into first gear, and out of neutral. So then on February 16th, we'll have the Sun square Uranus, which can always be delightful and spicy. Uranus loves to bring surprise. It loves to bring sudden change, especially with especially with a square. It can love to bring sudden change or change that requires some amount of adjustment. It can bring lightning bolts of insight. It feels to me here, particularly too, that there is this opportunity for a shift. It might be like I thought I was driving on this highway, and actually now like there's something that has just suddenly emerged in front of me, and I'm going to be taking it like a sharp left, like like I'm screeching the truck around, and it can feel a little bit like that with that Uranian energy of like I'm at the wheel, but how am I going to steer this? How am I? We're going crazy. So even as you feel like things are going crazy or things are shifting in some meaningful way, and you're going a direction that you didn't expect to be going, how can you really stay calm and centered and continue to steer and continue to move things around and adjust to whatever that new course is, and maybe appreciate? I kind of see as I picture that image, like maybe you thought you were going towards the mountains, which look, maybe they look imposing, and it looks like in some way I'm headed into this big dense rocky energy, and then suddenly you take a left and the horizon just opens out in front of you, and you're like, oh my gosh, I feel so free. I can drive faster here. I can, I can just fly off into the desert. That Uranian energy can often offer that to us. And it's interesting that the day after we have a new moon, and it's not just a new moon on February 17th, it's a new moon solar eclipse. Solar eclipses always happen at new moons. So the Earth, the moon, and the sun will be coming into that alignment. This is going to be square Uranus. So this is some energy that we'll be feeling really starting at the beginning of February and probably through the next month, I'd say. Certainly eclipses are events that bend space and time. We'll talk more about these in another video. Um, and this one might be especially shaky, I could say. And I don't mean shaky in a bad way. When I think about shaky, if I'm going to yoga class and you reach a point where you're holding something or holding a pose for so long that you start shaking, this can be viewed as a positive thing. It can be viewed as, all right, I'm holding it. I'm holding the center. I'm holding the center. Things are shaking. Things are shaking. I'm experiencing myself and the power of my mind and the power of my presence here. And I'm allowing for things to shake, and I'm not freaking out. So this is something to really maybe a reminder here to hold your center, to hold your center in what is your truth, what is your immediate and authentic experience, what is happening in your body, even as you feel things start to shift around you. These solar eclipses, they are entry points into the next chapter. With a North Node solar eclipse, we can particularly be focused on what we are stepping into as opposed to what we are stepping out of. So, what is the new chapter for you? Moving into yourself as a more authentic storyteller, as a more authentic narrator for your life. And maybe that even means being more authentic, and being more true to yourself in every moment as it arises. So, a great time to be clearing out self deception, a great time to be moving into a more complete, whole, and honest relationship with yourself and what it is that you stand for in a way that empowers other people to do and be and feel the same. Um, it's also interesting that just as this is happening, we're going to have Saturn, which will be again, the sort of representative of this eclipse, since Saturn is the representative or the local representative of Aquarius, and Saturn's going to be in the same degree as Neptune, soon to be reaching a conjunction in Aries at 0 degrees of Aries. Again, this to me feels like such a big shift in terms of how we relate to ourselves as individuals, how we relate to ourselves in the collective, how we experience ourselves as creators and as creator beings. So when I see that energy coming in, and I see that coming in here too, thinking about or becoming aware that you create with the truth of all of who you are, and you create in the wholeness of yourself. And that's not just your conscious, it's also your subconscious. It's all of your energy. This is what's picking your experiences for you. And the more that you embrace truth, the more that you embrace your own authenticity, the more that you embrace your own integrity, the more that you speak from all of your energy, and the more that you do this, the more consciously you are manifesting or creating your experiences. And then on February 18th, this will come to a sweet conclusion as the sun exits Aquarius and heads into Pisces. So I look forward to coming back in touch with you then. And if you'd like to come and join me, if you're watching this before January 20th, on that Ingress Day, Tuesday, January 20th, at 8 p.m. London time. So that is 12 p.m. Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern time, 9 p.m. European time, or 7 a.m. in Sydney the next morning, Wednesday morning. You are very welcome to join me for my free online Aquarius retreat, where I'll be sharing more about the energy of Aquarius. There'll be an energy activation, and we'll also have a chance to talk and, as always, to dance a little bit. They're really meaningful experiences for me and for those who attend as well. So I'd love to see you there. And if you want to work with me one-on-one, I'll put a link to my website down below. This month through February 14th, I am offering very, very special. I got a tap on the shoulder from my angels to offer some donation-based sessions, heart-to-heart connection sessions, and silent sessions, which are just really safe spaces for you to bring who you are, whether you want to talk or you don't want to talk, into relation with me and into a loving, kind, and masculine presence. It feels important to say that because I've seen and felt as Venus and Mars have been moving together. I've become very aware of the effects and impacts of male violence. And I don't say this to mean specifically to men. I think there's something around masculine violence, or we could label it as toxic masculinity, that a great many of us have experienced or have consciously experienced, including me, over the course of my life. So I say this as offering a safe masculine space in a male body to all those who are here, whether they wish to talk or not, just to know that you are very welcome. And I really wanted this to be fully accessible to all. So I'd love to see you one-on-one as well. And of course, I have my other offerings as well. So thank you so much for tuning in, and big love.